All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to what will be the final set of the day. Kasva versus Hohodfx. Not a matchup that I expected to see over here. Hohodfx is a good player, but it's not like he has been delivering anything in tournaments so far. He is from an Age of Empires 1 background, if I'm not mistaken. HSTL is a clone in Age of Empires 1, but I really don't know much about this guy because he has really been the under-the-radar guy so far.
I think it's more for his weird ass name more than anything else. Like, how are you gonna find him? How are you gonna just saying it alone is kind of a funky one. But yeah, now Hohodfx, I've seen him in the ladders. I've seen him on the qualifiers. Usually get knocked out quite early. Kind of interesting to see how this one's gonna go. Like we said, he kind of benefit from the fact that Hera was a DQ, didn't show at all. One of the more interesting details that kind of has me hype him up a little bit is the fact that Stone Please AoE was able to 2-1 Kiwian, aka Top, a established and decorated StarCraft 2 player, and then this lad 2-1'd Stone Please. So this guy is better than Kiwian, is how we take this, right? So this guy might have a shot against the infamous Kasva, right? He's totally going to win this. It's going to be 2-0. He's England versus France on Dry Arabia, and we know how this one ends. We've seen it a few times. England are somehow king now.
Yeah, England has been getting better and better. I feel like every single tournament, the meta evolves to a certain extent. So going back to the first AoE 4 tournament, Genesis, you didn't even have a single pick of Chinese or HRE. Nowadays, especially HRE is just a frequent pick. Chinese currently being a tiny bit bugged and also a little underwhelming, of course, changes things. But it used to be picked every once in a while. And then you go forward in time and you bump into stuff like, okay, people start to figure out how to use Abbasids on at least slower paced maps. People starting to figure out how to use the Delhi. And now this tournament is all about just realizing that England or the English have a lot more than what they initially show. Because for 2.5, 3 months, we've been talking about English as the spam the longbows and hope you win type of civilization. And you see, there is a lot more diversity and a lot more depth to the English.
Most definitely. I think a lot of that got unlocked by recent patches. I would say like it was fair where people kind of marked England, say a month and a half ago, that they were very much this kind of generic all-in Lombo cheesy strategy. Like I don't think that was an unfair assessment on the Civ, right? But it's definitely evolved a lot since then. 1 second, I actually need to restart my OBS. I don't know what it is about screen sharing in Discord, but my OBS keeps having a heart attack. So give me a sec there. But like to the point we're talking about, like it's the fact that in the previous patches, Lombos definitely were the best. Now that things like Horseman got buffed, the timings on tech ups, etc., got altered, I think England has a little bit more presence. I was concerned originally they were going to fall off the side of a cliff because I think one of the biggest kind of detriments to their existence really was just how powerful the siege creep was, right? Like the power of these siege oriented civs was really just crippling the ability for England to even be considered remotely relevant.
School of Cavalry coming in here for Kasva. He's building it with 5. And on the other side, what do we have for Hohodfx? Am I right seeing no landmark from him? What's going on? Question mark? Question mark?
Is he? Yeah, I got no one on this one, bud. I'm not gonna lie. I guess wise squirrels saves through the winter. I don't know. It feels a little bit delayed, kind of weirdly delayed. I'm trying to think what would have tripped him up here. He didn't have heavy people on woods. Did he? Oh no. Oh. Did he have gold? Like, did he have the gold vein? Like, did he have the mining camp down? Because he dropped the mill.
Wait a
second.
second.
He dropped the lumber camp.
No, we're just completely blind. He went for wheelbarrow in Dark Age. That's why.
Oh, what? Okay,
that mill is hiding in the tree. Look at that. It's like
I saw the mill, but I was wondering if he then had the required wood to build the mining camp. Because I'm trying to remember, like starting wood wise, did he use it all up? Was that a limitation maybe? But probably not. Yeah, it probably is just the wheelbarrow slowing him down. That's kind of a funky choice, but actually it makes a lot of sense if you have no intent of being aggressive with longbows early on. I think that's where this play works. So my assumption is Hohodfx is doing this in conjunction with the fact he's already in stone because he just wants to TC boom up against the French. And Kasva might be caught off guard by this, but you have to keep in mind he's doing this against France. Like France are still going to rush you with knights, and that does tend to put quite a dampener on the English mood in the games.
Yeah, part of the reason why he was so slow to Feudal Age is because he also had the second scout, so now it makes sense. You go for a mill, you go for wheelbarrow, second scouts, obviously you delay your feudal age time quite a bit, and he's mining stones, so there is going to be a second town center here. As you said, or wait, is it going to be a second town center though? What if we are going to see some stone wall sections being placed with longbows? We have seen strategies like that with the English, and it's a little cheesy, but you never know. Because he's pretty low on the stone department. So unless he's sending more villagers to stone, which he does, it's not gonna be a second town center anytime soon, but my question was answered here. With more villagers being sent to
Yeah.
stone, that's going to be a second TC.
Either that or it's a lot of walls. But yeah, probably the secondary TC is the primary concern. I feel like trying to do a kind of wall lombo rush on this type of map is very difficult. It's just way too easy for the French player to ignore that and then go straight through economy first. And then because you invest so heavily on the wall front, you don't really have yourself protected in your own base, right?
Yep. Kasva sees that stone mine though, and he's got a knight coming in. And at this point, the problem for Hohodfx is that he's got 3 longbows, but those won't do anything against the knights, and he's getting forced off from that stone mine before he would get to the required amount for that second TC. And I mean, the
Oh,
knights
it's
can
so
just
painful.
disengage and heal up. How is he gonna get the stone? I don't understand this.
You need to drop a racks. He should have enough wood. Yeah, he's actually got wood reserves, so he can actually drop a racks, and he just needs to position Spearman there. Like I don't think you can even sacrifice away from this player now. Like you've invested too much in the stone gathering that if you don't complete it now, I feel like you're giving up the game. So
Yeah,
we'll see if
100%.
he actually drops the racks. For the moment, it's just Lombos seem to be good enough after the TC damage to one of those knights to scare away Kasva. I feel like this is a little bit of a mistake, though. I think Kasva could have dove in, sniped out 2 or 3 of the villages, and it's kind of worth the trade.
Yeah, possibly. He's got one scout coming from the north, so he's going to see his opponent being there as well. And it looks like the scout on the south is getting a bit of a punishment over here. He loses the scout, which is definitely going to be annoying here. He won't have vision on that stone mine anymore. Looks like he is switching angles. For now, it's only one school of cavalry producing knights, but he's also mixing in a couple of archers against future spearmen. Spearmen that never appear on the battlefield, because Hohodfx isn't going for a single one of them.
Well, it's also just the ability to run down the lombos, right? So like that's the complementary element with the knights is anytime your opponent has to run away, especially when it's England, you're gonna kill him, and that's where the archers are nice because like the whole concept of investing even more into knights feels cool to an extent. Then you have to remember that there's only so many like knights that will be able to attack lombos, right? Before they reach their critical mass. Like if you surround a group of lombos, there's only so many knights that can strike at them. You're not the abbasids with phalanx and with 2 rows stabbing. So having those archers in that kind of composition allows you not only to snipe out and win those fights definitively, but then off the back of that, you can easily reach in and snipe out economy without having a hard dive if your opponent does eventually go into defensive spearmen.
Looks like archers are now coming in here for Kasva. He doesn't have a blacksmith right now. Instead, he's grabbing wheelbarrow himself. Second TC on the way for Hohodfx. And given how well positioned that mill is, now he's going to have a very nice farming eco around it once he needs to start adding farms. That's actually a very nice mill placement. And it has nice synergy with those town center positions. One thing that will be a little concerning for Hohodfx, though, is going to be gold access. So getting to Castle Age could be a bit of a challenge for him.
Yeah, it's like when you look at this layout, the thing that should kind of plow forward for France is they should be able to play those pocket economies, right? I know someone was asking what pocket economy. A pocket economy is an economy that is separated from your primary base. It functions independently. For example, like this is technically a pocket eco right here from Kasva. If you notice, the base isn't bridged, it isn't protected at all. France likes to play into these, and up against England is quite feasible because you're not going to get raided by cavalry. And because England has shown their intent to just play eco with a double TC, it means that Kasva should be able to get away with criminal amounts of greed in this game, at least for the first 20-minute marks. My concern is like getting away with this greed isn't good enough. You need to find a way to punish the England player because one of the beautiful things as the game goes on about being England with this double TC is you can actually then start to take risks with your own eco. You can go with these greedy kind of pockets yourself because you have throwaway villages because you have so many of them.
Indeed. Kasva will have to make a decision here. Does he want to be aggressive in Feudal Age, try to keep raiding with those knights? If he gets a good number of knights going, this could still be deadly, because, yeah, there is 2 town centers, there is longbows out here, but once you got the defense upgrade on those knights, once you get like 10, 15 knights going over here, you could easily run in and just remove that villager difference, because you can just take down 10 villagers, no problem. Barracks now coming in for Hohodfx, and as you said, Kasva can get away with a lot of greed, and that's exactly what we're seeing. Survival techniques on the way. And that is actually going to be a very nice source of food for him. And that is probably the biggest question mark for Hohodfx. How is he going to access food long term? He's running out of sheep. He's gonna have, of course, the berries and can start adding farms, but Kasva will be able to maintain a similar food eco without farms.
Yeah, so you can already see the walls going down. Hohodfx, the most important thing is England in this situation is you just need to secure that back area for farmland, right? As much as possible. And then you just thrive on that. That's your power spike. It's infinite food as well. I know, crazy. Anyone who watches Age of Empires 2 comes here. That's right. You just drop a farm and it never runs out. So it's very easy for England to maintain itself in a defensive formation. I want to see him kind of playing towards the northeastern side of his base because the one limiting factor is going to be wood. And as you can see, like the two additional wood lines near him are to the north and northeast side. So he will have to play more towards that center, which might expose his flanks a little bit more.
Looks like Kasva will stay on one town center, which is the right decision at this point. It's not like he has the chance to catch up anymore, so might as well just play one TC and think about either Castle Age or a feudal push. He has been massing archers quite actively, but doesn't have a ton of knights to work with. And I don't think that those archers over here will be enough to push into the opponent's base, so it's just basically gonna be for defense as he loses the scout to the longbows.
Yeah, it's kind of a weird one. Like, Kasva has to have a standing army when he sees this many longbows showing. Otherwise, Hohodfx can turn what is an eco-greedy game into a militarily present game. And that's always kind of the balance check. It doesn't feel good to do if you're Kasva like this, because if you're actually being forced to build military and your opponent has 2 TCs, you want to be able to punish him, right? Like, he's being a greedy son of a gun. But Hohodfx has actually done a phenomenal job of balancing greed with presence. A lot of players would have had half the military count of this, and all of a sudden the game becomes very troublesome, and Kasva tends to cruise towards an easy victory where he just dives into your base and snipes villages. That's just not the case here. However, with this wraparound, I think there is a bit of greed to this, because I just checked the formation. There's only 2 spearmen from Hohodfx. And that means he's going to rinse the entire army. Oh my... Why? In what world was this the composition? Oh no.
Absolute disaster here. The only thing I can imagine is that he didn't know Kasva has this much knights. He was scouting actively, and Kasva was hiding that force in a stealth forest, so maybe he thought that Kasva is just going straight to Castle Age, but even then, you can't move out, because the thing is that 2 spearmen won't even stop 3 knights, let alone this much. And it is just an absolute slaughter. It is now 25 kills to 5, the entire army of Hohodfx is getting cleaned up, and now those knights will have a window to start running in and killing villagers.
Yeah, I think in this situation, Hohodfx will probably wish he had some of those horsemen, but the only pony in this situation is the one-trick pony nature of his army. Lombo only in this situation. Like, I thought we would pass this, guys. I mean, like, you know, we talked about we don't get to see Hohodfx often. What's he going to offer us up? He's offering us up the meta from 3 months ago. 1 unit type, trying to win. And that is just not going to do it in this day and age. This meta is about diversification. You have to have at least 2 unit comps to really kind of close out a game. And the fact that he doesn't have, say, 10 spearmen there hurts him so much. 10 spearmen there, I think all of a sudden this fight is looking very scary for Kasva. You can try and snipe out quickly, but the initial brace and root factor will offset the aggression of the Knights long enough that maybe Hohodfx takes an edge. Instead, now he's kind of on the edge. And you can see he continues the wall ups. He's going to wall to the south as well, trying to pin himself in. But this means he's forfeiting a lot of the map over, and it means that Kasva can continue these greedy eco pockets we were talking about before.
And it's also a big investment for him, and it's not like his villager count is that much better. Kasva's got the faster training villas, so he's got 50 versus 52.
Yeah, it just feels like you're in a catch-up situation, and these spearmen are not scary. There's just too many archers here. After you lose the main battalion of Longbowmen, there's just way too many archers coming out from France, and you can see the knights are just juking and jiving, and they will go diving straight into the Longbows, forcing them back and away, but after that you can turn around and chase down a bunch of the villagers instead. And this is getting problematic quickly. I mean, this is going to expose a lot of your economy at this rate. A lot of these villages being hemorrhaged quickly. You look at the lost unit count. My God, it's a massacre! This is not the Battle of Agincourt. This is everything afterwards. This is a nightmare for England.
A nightmare, in literal terms, and the villagers on the right side are just so stranded, so 2 knights, the archers will cut off all the escape path, and Hohodfx has nowhere to run. He's making a run for a tower at this point. That's the best thing he can do.
You know why we can't hear any villagers screaming? There's none left to scream. They are just being butchered en masse here. 22 units now lost for Kasva, compared to the trip up of 66s killed. And most of those kills are notches on the belt of the town center. Town center right now is the only MVP Hohodfx has in dispute for the top title, but he's going to need a lot more at this rate. because now the forward outpost being dropped by Kasva, he's going to give himself a foothold to fall back upon. He already has an outpost behind it. You don't see outposts crawling out of France this early often, but it is going to pay off quickly.
Yeah, he moved out with those longbows, and he just lost too much over there. He lost, like, in his entire army, whereas Kasva's barely losing anything, so he's just able to maintain that pressure. And you get the feel that he feels the blood in the water. Now he's flooding archers and knights, knowing that his opponent is on the back foot, and he can just keep amping up that pressure. As you said, all of those forests accessible for Hohodfx are now exposed to the archers and the knights, so you could just keep pressuring those and cut your opponent off from the wood that he so desperately needs for those spearmen and archers.
Yeah, this is like being one of those happy kids that lives in a nice little cabin in the woods with their parents. You're like, what a wonderful day for a stroll. You walk outside and all of a sudden you get mauled by a bear. Kasva is that bear right now. Like, it's almost like Hohodfx didn't have a worry in the world. He's like, this is a great game. I got loads of lombos. I got a second TC. My base is looking very pretty. No one's going to cause me any issues. But Kasva, well, you got an issue and you're going to need a tissue in this situation. I mean, the amount of knights is it never feels like it's going down. It feels like it's actually increasing. And the amount of spearmen coming out in each of these fights is decreasing constantly from Hohodfx, as once again the army is going to be wiped, and soon he just might be routed from the map entirely. The only thing that's keeping him alive is the fact this double TC is blocking a clear route into the farmland economy. But the problem is you're no longer gathering wood, which means you're going to struggle to replace the longbows, struggle to replace the spearmen, and struggle to continue to increase your farmlands because wood is the most critical ingredient for England right now.
And he's down 20 villagers as well. His opponent has all the map control, so soon he's going to be starved out of resources. Well, you see, he already had to start adding farms. But Kasva is going to be more than happy to just take the boars, and there it is, the GG is getting called by Hohodfx. One bad move to move out with those longbows might have just lost the game for him, but that's how you play English. You live and die with that ball of death, the longbows and spears.
Yeah, but usually there's like a more depth coming out towards your opponent with the composition. You usually, yeah, that right there was that wasn't just them dying. Them dying was like halfway through that. Halfway through that was us in the game realizing that you only had lombos out there. Then the rest was the death. That's how it feels. Like honestly, I think Kasva saw that play. And you kind of get that okay feeling. Like, is this guy okay? Has he played Age of Empires 4? Does he know that does he know that I have knights? Like, because it feels like you should always be expecting knights. The only way that play makes sense at all is if you drop, say, your palings, which I don't remember the last time I saw an England player do. And at first, I thought maybe that's what Hohodfx was going to do. He's like, he's going to bait him in. He's going to drop palings, and then he can't be attacked. We don't even see that. He just gets butchered en masse. And that was pretty much the rest of the game. Butcher, butcher, butcher. All of a sudden, Kasva's opened up his own meat shop, and he's serving chunks of Hohodfx to the local economy piece by piece.
It was just an absolute slaughter, and as you said, there was just no room for recovery. And villager high was 67 for Kasva, 59 for Hohodfx, so faster training villagers for French also compensates for its second thousand rent. From that point on, a red player just didn't have the chance to protect his eco, really. I feel like when Kasva was looking at that fight, he probably was like, okay, where is the catch? Like, there's no way you just moved out with 50 longbows against my knights. Like, especially against French. If this was against Rus, let's say, you could maybe justify it, not necessarily anticipating knights in feudal, but I mean, against French, you always gotta expect those knights to be there.
Yeah, honestly, like you mentioned the villager high, it almost felt like Hohodfx was high in a different way, right? Like not a lot of this strategy made sense. Like I was kind of on board with this whole idea of a secondary TC. I was like, this is amazing. I've only really ever seen one other England player do double TC, and that's Marine Lord in high level play. Hohodfx might be a god. We just don't know it yet. And then it comes back to that thought process that we applied with Mister on the last series. If it works, you're a genius. If it doesn't, you look like a fool. And he definitely looked like a kind of a clueless fool in this one. I'm not saying that to be mean to Hohodfx, but he looked like a headless chicken. He looked like he moved out with this clear intent of like, this is a choosy game. I'm going to win this. And the moment that it failed, which it was always going to because it was flawed from the get go, there was no but now I will do this. Instead, it was but now I will sacrifice some of my villagers. Maybe he just wants like a blood tribute. But Kasva's not going to let up in that situation. I think like in this game too, I'm going to need to see like more of a plan out of Hohodfx because I think one of the big things that really differentiates good players from great players is the difference between a strategy and a tactic. I feel like everything I saw out of Hohodfx was just a tactic, right? A tactic. I build two TCs, then like I will build a longbow army. Yeah, but what's the overall strategy? What are you aiming towards in this game? What are you taking control of? And that was the difference. Kaz was like, well, I'm going to pivot into archers with knights. I'm going to control the midsection of the map. Take this fight straight away. I'm going to move outposts to outside your base. That detail there, the outpost, for example, is a tactic. But the strategy, the overall strategy is to starve Hohodfx out of this game. So going into game 2, I really need to see more of an overarching game plan instead of a, oh, that's cute type play moment out of Hohodfx.
This being said, we're jumping into game number 2 very soon. We have 1 minute on the countdown. Mongolian Heights, a map that we haven't seen so far. It's an intriguing map in many ways because it's a somewhat obvious Delhi map, and we are going to have Delhi being picked here by the red player Hohodfx, and Kaz was gonna play English. This is something that you referred to before when it comes to Danube River. You said that one of the things that English can do so well is harass those fishing ships with the longbowmen. We could see something very similar over here for Kasva. Hohodfx has banned Delhi, so obviously that wasn't an option. Hohodfx also banned the Rus and Mongols, so probably your top 3 civilizations for this map has been taken away. So Kasva has to choose between HRE, Abbasids, and English. Probably English makes the most sense here.
Yeah, so this is really tough, I think, for Hohodfx. Like I said, I'm concerned about what he can do in the games, just based on what we saw in game 1, and I do think that this is actually a crippling matchup for the Delhi on Danube River. And I think actually, well, not the Danube River, sorry, Mongolian Heights, but similar concept of that whole river that you want to play towards, right? It plays out the same way. And what I mean by that, the way it plays out, is when you talked about previous patches when the fishing boats were even stronger, usually one of Delhi's kryptonites was England due to the longbow range, able to snipe out your fishing economy that you heavily invest in. And they will be able to do that because whenever you choose to go onto the sea, you're actually sacrificing your fuel age time. You delay yourself by about a minute, minute and a half, possibly 2 minutes. And that difference maker means that Kasva's going to have 9, 10 of these longbows out. And that's when you reach a critical mass where you're able to start bursting through these fishing boats, even with the passive healing rate at the docks. And you can already see that Hohodfx is taking the bait. He's already done it. He's dropping the dock. He's going to invest in these fishing vessels, but then he's not going to have any way of protecting them. And that is my concerning detail because also, like, unless you can actually sustain up to 10 fishing boats, then get into stables and push out a few horsemen, you leave yourself in a very fragile state. And Kasva has played England enough and probably played this matchup enough on water hybrid maps to know that his power spike timing is by like 8 minutes with a combination of 12 to 14 longbows that just basically sink the entire investment on the waterfront.
And the thing is that if you invest into the water, it's going to take some time until it pays off. So oftentimes when you see games like Danube River, for example, civilizations like Rus or Delhi going for the water, their fuel age times are actually slower than what you would get for them if you were playing them on an open map like Arabia. That's because the beginning of the game is all about that investment into lumberjacking and the fishing geek when it needs some time to pay off. And on the other side, the English can rush a very fast fuel age, so you will have Kasva up to fuel age much faster than his opponent, giving him a very big window to take those fishing ships down before they can really kick in.
Yeah, that's my chief concern. Like, I've seen this matchup time and time again. I've seen some specialist England players just dismantle full sea economies based on this play, and it always works on these small kind of choke point focused like water crossing maps, right? So Danube River, I mentioned Mongolian Heights. Anything that doesn't have a wide area from which you can break away from the longbows. And also, like, it's not just the longbows, it's the fact that you can confidently drop an outpost as England and feel good about it because the attack speed again. So I wouldn't be surprised if Kasva quickly drops an outpost at the central crossing and denies most of that away from you. And that's when it starts to get worrisome, because then what is Delhi's response? Well, if you get up the feudal, which is going to be slower anyway, you can drop an archery range. Yep, but actually you need to have horsemen. Well, you could go horsemen, but I think a few spearmen come out and they counter out what you're doing. I think Kasva has played this enough to understand that it's going to be up to 10 longbowmen, possibly 12, and then you drop a Rax, get a few spearmen out, and all of a sudden Hohodfx doesn't actually have a play in this game, and we could then very quickly be talking about a 2-0.
It's a possibility, especially because if Kaz was able to take down those fishing ships, then suddenly he's gonna have a window to make his own dock. The problem right now is that he just can't make a dock because the fishing ships would kill him, and it looks like he's going to further delay the feudal age of Hohodfx by harassing that villager. Not gonna be much, but once again, 5-10 seconds of delay could be immensely valuable here.
And you don't want to defend yourself. Like, this is a smart play, because Kasva understands his opponent already won the water. He's not going to invest in a Rax to defend himself. The best thing you can do is counter with the scout. The good news is because the villager was attacking, now the scout has the edge, and Kasva's going to lose his scout because he's not moving it away. Big mistake made. And he won't even get one villager for his trouble. He'll back it away just in time before it would die, but not able to find that maximum impact of sniping one or two of the villies.
Kind of like that play for Kasva, to be honest, because obviously wants to maximize his damage output, and he can heal the scout back up no matter what, so he just wants to deliver as many hits before his scout gets weak, and then just get away with this. Obviously, he needs to be considerate of the fishing ships being able to fire at his scout at this point, but there's a second scout coming in as well, and this could be a nice advantage for Kasva in this fight. Nope.
I'm surprised is he... Okay, I don't want to see him sacrificing that scout, because I think actually what you do is you win the fight with this scout, and then, yeah, exactly that. You pass the baton, right? You pass all the sheep, and they run them back to base. So now Kasva has a ridiculous surplus economy to cover this early game aggression we talked about, but what a move out of Hohodfx. He's played this matchup. This is critical. This outpost going down nullifies everything I was talking about. This is what I needed to see. And it's too late of a move out by Kasva to counter this out. As he's moving out with villagers now, it's going to be a big ask to snipe this out. He might just be quick enough, but he might be at risk of being fired upon by the fishing boats as a result.
English villagers being able to shoot arrows is so big over here.
Oh my god. Yep. We don't often get to see it make a big difference, but here it really is. The problem is you have to be careful with the fishing boat range. In fact, occasionally he's getting baited in, but it looks like he might have done enough to deny this, but he will have to keep an eye on it because it's close to completion. Instead, Hohodfx will now go for a more defensive outpost, but this outpost doesn't deny the longbows being able to snipe into your fishing boats.
And the longbows are now coming in, so this tower is going to be denied. Down south, we are going to have wars just as much as on the north. So the only crossing here for Kasva will be this one. But as you said, now the longbows are coming in, and suddenly those fishing boats will have a hard time surviving.
And for some reason, Hohodfx is, I don't know, posturing, puffing his chest out, saying, "You what, mate?" Well, arrows is what. He'll have to back off for that one. He does at least get the outpost down, but like I said, this does nothing. It doesn't have the range to defend you. And the problem is that once Kasva gets up to about, let's say, 8, 9 of these longbows, you start to actually do enough damage that you out-damage the heal rate. In fact, he's already doing it with a small quantity. You're just seeing it here. And this means that you've kind of sunken your investment now. It's not going to be easy to actually find value out of these fishing boats anymore. Because once you do get up to 9, I think it's like 3 volleys to kill off a fishing boat. And that can happen quick enough that you won't actually get any bang for buck out of this investment.
Here comes the stable, so Spearman will still be needed for Kasva, and he doesn't have any of those. This could be the saving grace, really, for Hohodfx at this point. Because, as you said, those fishing ships will go down very fast to all those longbows now, unless he's got some horsemen coming in. He has not gotten a Musk, though, so he isn't going to have efficient production, making it much more difficult to mass those horsemen.
Yeah, and I think this is intentional, because remember the time I was talking about, like, Kasva gets up to about between 8 to 12, somewhere in that region of longbows, then he drops a racks, because he understands these timings. These timings are based on that dropping the religious building you were talking about. The fact that that's not going to be there means that Hohodfx might be able to count this out, but the damage is already starting to rack up as his fishing fleet is just being picked apart as it runs up and down the Mongolian River.
And behind this one of the things we haven't talked about is that Kasva had that scout being trailed by so many sheep. I'm not exactly sure where that went, but it's possible it may have gotten picked off. And that would be annoying because this map has a ton of sheep, so being able to secure those sheep for yourself when you don't have fish is quite vital.
Yeah, so usually the big brain play, and this is like the pristine map I think started the trend of double scout, is you basically get a secondary scout and you run both of them towards the center of the map and then up and down it, right? You patrol it and grab everything. So missing out on that would be a big deal. I'd be curious to know where the hell those sheep went, because I don't think Hohodfx ever got them.
Very good question.
Did he hide them in a corner?
It's possible, but there's just no sign of them.
Because they're not in his base, right? They're definitely not in his base.
No, definitely not in the base of Hohodfx. Okay, there they go.
Oh, he got it around the back! Saving Private Barbar has actually achieved a mission complete here. Sheep have been returned to base. That is a lot of food as well. That's going to cover him for at least an extra 10, 12 minutes at this rate. So you're pretty cozy to actually cruise this one out. And as long as you just keep denying these fishing boats, you should be able to move ahead of Hohodfx.
And as you said, that timing is going to be crucial for those spears, because now you got the spears going, so just when the horsemen would appear on the battlefield, Kasva is once again a step ahead, and he's already gonna have the spears out. And now that he's cleaned up the river, he's got his own window to drop a dock, maybe even start setting up some fishing ships, or just go for a couple of galleys, making it much more difficult for the opponent to cross.
Yeah, so I think a lot of the time, the England players in this situation, they don't even dock themselves. They just essentially nullify any value that the docks can gain for their opponent, and then they push across the crossing towards the base, right? Because it's all about playing to England's strong timing, and usually like 15, 20 minutes is like where you want to start thinking, can I end the game? And if you annihilate these dock lines, I think it's like feasible. You might have to invest a bit more heavily and earlier into Rams, though, just because of this outpost at the crossing.
There are still a couple of fishing ships left around, though, and that is actually giving a quite nice eco advantage to Hohodfx. It's double the food eco.
Wow. Did Kasva? I don't think Kasva even spotted that southern dock, and he wouldn't look there because of the walls. This actually might be next level from Hohodfx. Like, playing off the kind of gullibility of an England player, like, oh, well, he's walled down here. I have no reason to go there. Not even gullibility, right? It's just the predictability we talked about, because England's so static. If they ever move their army to the south, they might expose themselves in the center. So it's unlikely that Kasva is ever going to spot this at any crucial time in the next 5 minutes and shut it down. I mean, Hohodfx will continue to scale forward, and that's when it gets troublesome for the England player.
Hohodfx is playing this one patiently, though, and he's got a gigantic food eco with the fishing ships and the berries working for him. So Kasva needs to be careful because, while he does have a couple of spearmen here, a huge amount of horsemen could be difficult to deal with. And at this point, his opponent is controlling all 3 choke points, so there's a chance to just open up a wall on one side and then try to go in for a raid from behind.
Yeah, it's definitely a little bit spooky right now. I feel like Kasva, if you check the vision situation, he's not playing like astute Age of Empires. He can't.
He's blind,
because
basically.
Of those walls. Yeah, he's basically playing a game of battleships, whereas, I don't know, like Hohodfx is playing Monopoly. Every piece of detail feels seen. He understands everything that's going to be coming and everything that could be. And once this scout is gone, that's when Kasva feels blind. Like that's when you don't even get this like snippet of info every once in a while. He, at least before it dies, will find out that there's a lot of horsemen, mainly because they're trying to stab him to death. But now he doesn't know what's next, right? And that's scary. Like, so is Hohodfx now going to build into archers? Is he going to boom up? Is he going for a second TC? You don't know.
Sanctity before efficient production over here for Hohodfx, so he wants to grab that sacred site. He's got that control over that side, and that would basically be a very decent amount of guaranteed gold income because Kasva currently can't hit that, so it actually makes sense to go for Sanctity first and only then go for efficient production. Kasva is aware of all those horsemen, and we've sort of hit a stalemate over here because neither of these players are really motivated to cross the river at this point.
Yeah, it kind of feels like one of those whoever jumps first dies situation, right? Because on one side, you've got these longbows you'll be playing into. On the other side, you've got these natural defenses with the outpost being dropped by the Delhi player, as well as the fact that if you ever do make that crossing, these fishing boats will add damage into the fights. And now, here's the time we talk about Kasva finally getting the Rams, but the wraparound on the south, Hohodfx. He's going to look to strike first, and he'll strike faster. And this could actually mount a pretty decisive blow into Kasva's economy. Remember, he doesn't have that diversification of the waterfront. He's all in on this base. So every villager really hurts to lose. And already 2 being picked off. Looks like that's going to be enough for the moment. He'll back off. Ram, in the meantime, is going to push across the ford, looking to deal with the outpost. Because right now, Kasva just wants to access the base of Delhi, right? As long as he just skirts this and doesn't let the horseman go too deep, he knows that if he goes in, he'll actually deal a more decisive blow than the Delhi player, because the Delhi player has no way of building rams and no way of sieging.
Absolutely. The best way to counter these raiding type of play that Hohodfx is doing is just by forcing a fight close to his base, especially when you can start slaughtering villagers on those berries.
Yeah, that is not good. 3 villagers picked off, so already a better trade for Kasva. And remember, like, while you're fishing in the south, you can't necessarily hide your land economy. It's kind of obvious where it's going to be. Look for the berry bushes, look for the nearby wood line. Before you know it, you might be looking into the mud as your face is going to be deep in the dirt at this rate. Hohodfx is going to have to fight.
And he just now finished efficient production, so he didn't have that ability to flood units over here before. And that's why his archer numbers are so low. And without archers here, he's going to struggle against that many spearmen, despite the fact that he's got a fairly sizable force of cavalry. Oh!
Kasva? What? No! Okay, he baits himself in on the archer line, and the spearman that's struggling to actually reach the horseman because he's just holding his ground. He's going to start to peel them back a little bit now, and it looks like there's just not enough here. Like you mentioned, the archers are a problem, and now the horsemen, because they don't have the backup of a 50-50 force, they cannot hold the front line. They're going to fold and run away. Spearman's still alive. Archer's a decent count still for Kasva, and all the while the ram has just been ticking its way slowly but surely through that archery range.
Beautiful play here by Kasva. I actually like that he used the longbows to tank the cavalry attack here, because the idea was pretty simple. He wanted to focus down those archers before a single spearman gets into the battle. He knew exactly he was going to lose longbows, but his idea is that he can't afford to lose the spearmen, so it's better to lose the longbows to the archer fire, the horseman fire, than it is to lose the spearman, because if you lose the spears, you just die to the cavalry. But this way, he just absorbed the cavalry charge with the longbowman, and ultimately the spearman all survived the battle and was able to clean up all the cav. Now the mosque is going down, there is not a single scholar garrisoned in these production buildings, and Hohodfx is just getting pushed back so rapidly.
It's actually kind of crazy how trivial horsemen look in that situation. I think like what we've basically got KPTSD, Knight Post-Traumatic Stress Disorder, right? Like we've seen Knights so often just dismantle archer lines from making that mistake. But we have to remember that even with the bonus damage horsemen get, Knights deal more damage. That's why it looks so scary. The initial impact, the follow-up damage is always higher than what these horsemen could do. And that's why they looked so trivial. Even though that they got to stick on their target as much as they wanted, it just didn't seem to matter. And now, moving deeper, Kasva spots out the back base being built up. And this is a problem. These are choke points. This is not the way Hohodfx wants to fight. It means he can't wrap around and even get on the longbow anymore. Instead, the spearmen switch back and forth, and the longbows chase in looking for squishier targets. And they have found a big squishy element, and they might press hard. Hohodfx, so much of his economy being exposed here. They'll deal with the archers in the meantime. Horsemen will wrap around trying to stick on top of them, but the spearmen now going to stab them in the back. And once again, good trades as Kasva continues to just run his way through the base with a double ram play. And once they reach these archery ranges, you have to question what your play is. Hohodfx trying to tech up. If this goes through, he could have a miracle in his hands, but instead it's going to be a disaster. He gets sniped out, the longbows force him off, and Hohodfx has no hope in hell of coming back in now. He will call GG, and Kasva will make it a quick 2-0 to end his day.
Oh, what a game over here. It really felt like for a long time that the boom is just going to be big here for Hohodfx and he's going to get away with that, but then suddenly Kasva just shows up with the critical mass, and we've talked about Sanctity being prioritized over that efficient production. Maybe that actually turned out to be a disaster, because just before capturing those sacred sites, he wasn't able to leverage the Sanctity at all because he didn't have the sacred sites yet. But it also meant that he didn't have efficient production, so he really wasn't able to mass those archers, and without efficient production, the Delhi is just such an underwhelming civilization, because they don't have anything special going for them. Their real power is just being able to flood those units out and really match the opponent's numbers, and that never really happened here.
No, and honestly, like in this situation, I think that the important thing to remember is this whole idea of leaving a choke point open to go into your base is really cool, right? Like, oh, I can predictably push them in one direction. However, it's only cool and effective if there's something your opponent is scared of there. And I think that's the really big problem we saw here. Like you said, the military efficiency not being there, not being able to double up the production rates means you haven't got a threatening army. And I feel like this is one of those situations where actually just walling all three of the crossings might be good because it buys you a little bit more time. Not much because it's battering rams, but it might be enough to get those initial units out to defend yourself. At least give you the heads up. Maybe double layer in the center. You need anything to delay. It almost felt like Hohodfx felt strong, and you have to wonder why. It's almost like he managed to sneak that back line in, right? Where he's like, haha, I got my fishing vessels again. You suck, Kasva. Get ready to lose. But Kasva doesn't care because he understands even if you have a secondary fishing line, that takes time to return its investment, right? It's not a like initial invest straight away, get your return. You need a few minutes, and that delay is crippling the Hohodfx's timing. The fact that he wasn't able to successfully get that outpost down on his opponent's side in the central crossing is exactly what caused this snowball effect where Kasva felt confident about the state of the game. Had that outpost gone down, entirely different game. Kasva all of a sudden can't hit his timings. He's delayed enough, and Hohodfx probably has a big enough archer count to defend himself off the back of not only having more time to build them up, but also the fact he would have had more surplus eco because he wouldn't have lost all those fishing boats. But we're talking in what ifs here. The outcome in the end is going to be an easy 2-0 for Kasva, and Kasva, this might actually be his deepest run in any tournament for AoE4 so far. I don't think I've seen
Not yet.
this deep before.
I think he was top 8 in Genesis, so right off the bat, when he
yes.
started. He actually had a very good run. Ever since then, he fell off a little bit of a cliff here, simply because the competition just got a lot tougher. But yeah, he has made it into the deciders tomorrow, and he's going to have a chance to qualify into the top 8 of N4C.
Yes, but his opponent is not going to be easy. None of them really should at this stage, as he will be facing off against Beastie in a best of 7. And honestly, I think all the remaining players are really challenging. Like, to round out the day, for anyone wondering, like, what we can expect to see tomorrow,